Welcome, welcome. Joshua Thompson. Michael Finnell. One more time, give it up for him. Yeah. So the title of this automatically has me super, super intrigued. Ain't that it? The PK sanctuary of all the stereotypes, conceptions, misconceptions that we have of preachers' kids. I'm eager to delve into this one. Tell us about the podcast, how you got started, and just kind of like your motivation for podcasting and what message you're putting out there.
Okay, let's see if I can answer all of those. Well, it's called the PK Sanctuary because one of the reasons I did that is because the term PK sometimes does have a lot of connotation to it, and none of it is correct. We're no different from anyone else. We're just like everyone else. It's just because our parents are pastors and first ladies, we're up front. Yeah. So everything we do, good or bad, is seen. So I wanted to create a sanctuary, a safe place for PKs to come that could have tough conversations, positive conversations. The podcast was born out of a communication breakdown that occurred between my father and I. And I actually have degrees in communication. And I thought, I've spent all this money. I should be able to take care of this. And what I mean by that, once again, we have all these notions that our parents should do this, or our siblings should do this, our friends should do this. If you arrive first, have the conversation, start the conversation. It doesn't matter. Whoever gets there first. So through communication, my dad and I were able to heal that, and we are thick as thieves now. So that's the birth of the podcast, because what I found out is no matter the denomination, no matter the culture, PKs go through the same thing. They experience the same thing. So once again, I wanted a safe space to do that. So through communication, having the conversation, my introduction to my podcast is welcome to the PK Sanctuary. Come on in, let's have the conversation. Yeah. I firmly believe that probably 95 to 99% of misunderstandings are because of how it was said. Yeah. What did you say and how did you say it? And if you can fix those two things, you can just about take care of anything. We don't see that a lot anymore. Everybody's very sensitive and they don't really approach having a conversation that way. It's not just for PKs, but it's mainly for us, because also what I found was there are a lot of groups, maybe Facebook groups or different groups out there for PKs, but they weren't necessarily positive. I listened to a lot of them, and they just, for me, seem like gripe sessions. Right. And that's okay if you're going to complain, but where's the healing? Where's the solution?
The moving forward.
Yeah, what are we doing with all of this that we're talking about? What are we doing with that? So I also wanted to talk about the success stories. And it was rough. I struggled with sharing it because I love my family. And I love my father and I love my mother, and I didn't want anyone looking at him like, uh-oh. Right. Ooh. I'm like, no, uh-oh, no, he's human. Right? We all bleed red. And I struggled with that, but then I realized there's other people out there that need this. And one of the things about any type of ministry or podcast, you can't be selfish. You have to be transparent. You have to be willing to put yourself out there, and sure, you shouldn't do it. If you're not going to talk about the real stuff, then what are we doing here? And I didn't want it to be fluff and puff and, oh, praise the Lord. Let's have the real conversations.
So of those conversations, you've got folks from many different denominations, folks who identify as PKs and also outside of it. What are some of the common themes, shared stories, common threads between all of your guests, all of the issues that is within that PK sanctuary, but really is representative of just everyday people going through everyday stuff? Right.
Well, also the irony is we're not PKs, right? We're not kids.
Fair.
Most of us are grown, but that's the term everybody identifies with. One of the most common threads is what I found is that both of my parents actually did a very good job of communicating to us, because what happens is pastors, they're on fire for the Lord, and I'm going to work for Jesus, and that's great. But you also need to talk to your family about that if you want them to come along with you. My father did that. My big brother is here with me on tonight. My mom is here with me on tonight. My sister, my family are here. And one of the things we talked about is when my father realized that it was time for him to birth a ministry, He explained it to us. He didn't just force it on us. They didn't make us, but he gave us by that he gave us ownership of it. So one of the common threads I found is that doesn't happen. Most of the PKs were just told, you're going to go to church, and I'm going to pastor, and I'm going to do this, and I'm going to do that, and I just expect you to fall in line. It doesn't work that way because, once again, we're not PKs. That may work for kids, but when they're grown and you're starting a ministry, if you want your family to be there, you have to communicate the vision to them in a way that is loving and effective, that we take on ownership. Our church started in Bloomington, Indiana, over 40 years ago. It was an old abandoned storefront. It wasn't anything that anybody would look at and think anything good could come out of it. When my father drove us, he put us in the car one day, my brother and I and his best friend. He drove us south to Bloomington, and on the way there, he explained to us what was occurring. Like, I feel like the Lord is calling me to come here and start a work. And we're like, okay, great. Until we get there, and he unlocks the front door of the storefront. And once again, it was an abandoned storefront. And so when I say abandoned, the meat cases were still there. Oh, wow. The food was still there. The soda pop was still there. It wasn't soda pop anymore. But all of those things were still there. When he unlocked the door and opened it, of course, he's very excited. And my brother and I were standing next to each other, and I said, I think Dad is crazy.
So he's running on faith, you're running on sight.
He's lost his mind. And my brother said to me, even so, we have to help him. And from that moment forward, actually, that's exactly what we did. So that common thread, once again, is just helping a lot of PKs understand, okay, they may not have done that for you. Once again, how do we move forward? How do we get through the resentment? How do we get through the hurt? How do we do that through communication?
From the inception of this podcast, and then there's the whole production part of it, and having ideas and figuring out that, which sometimes is a completely separate entity in business from why you want to do it. Mm-hmm. Give us one of your biggest teachable moments or learning moments. Where has your growth been from starting all of this?
Not to repeat myself, but once again, understanding that a lot of preconceived notions we even have about our parents. Perfect parents require perfect kids, and vice versa. It doesn't exist. And one of the things I've learned, and we have got to give each other grace. Mm-hmm. Even within our families, not forget the friends and everyone else, and within families, don't be so hard on each other. Give some grace here. Yeah. Once again, to whom much is given, to whom much is required. That's true, but once again, my father's human, my mother's human, and you have got to allow people their humanity and grace within that. So that's been my big thing, because I felt like, well, my dad should do this, and he should do that. Well, what about me? Mm-hmm. The commandment for children never changes. Honor thy father and thy mother, that thy days may be long upon the earth and well with thee. That commandment is not negotiable. And that was one of the biggest things I realized. It's not negotiable on what anybody else does. That's what I'm supposed to do. And if I take care of that, God takes care of the rest.
Y'all getting some free spiritual game today.
Amen.
Today, a whole word. Yeah, clap for that.
Anybody have the offering plate? No. Offering plate? No. We pass offering in the PK Sanctuary.
Before we let you go, I think since we do have a live audience, this is kind of a unique and special thing. My deference is almost towards your family here, but we have a lot of other folks too. I'm curious, anyone in the audience have a question or a something or a how to peek even further behind the curtain of the PK Sanctuary? I want to open it up for someone to put you on the spot. Fantastic. See, I love it. The enthusiasm, and it was real quick.
I'm going to give you the most honest answer I have. He probably should not do that as much as possible. What I found is when you are a PK, you are already exposed. You are already out front, whether you want to be or not. So privacy, you have to respect your children's privacy. They're people too. I'm not sure what he shares, how often he shares it, but I would suggest that he is very careful in that, because also Everybody that goes everywhere else comes to church. The same people that go to the mall, that go to the restaurant, and everyone does not mean well. And you don't want to expose your family and make them vulnerable in a way that people can use that. So outside of the dollar, I honestly would suggest he not do that much. There's a lot of other examples he can use. Let his children have their lives and their privacy, and I'm sure the Lord will inspire him in other ways.
Yeah. All right. So leave the holy dollars at home for the children.
Still give them the dollar.
Right, there's that. Cost of living is expensive. Thank you so much. Any parting words for our guests, things that you have coming up, just anything?
Parting words. Well, first of all, there's a book that's been in the works for a long time. I'm not going to tell you how long, but 2025 will be the year that I publish that book. The book, which is part of what this podcast is about as well, it contrasts and compares biblical communication principles with scholarly communication principles and how I married those to bring about healing once again for PKs. So that book, stay tuned, 2025. Wendy West is not going to not let me do it. It's going to happen. Also, my parting words would simply be, I'm going to repeat again, understand that 95 to 99% of misunderstandings come from what you said and how you said it. And if you can fix that, then you can have a successful friendship, relationship, marriage, and especially PKs with their pastors.
Give it up for the creator and founder of the PK Sanctuary. Thank you.